This is the Russian Dynamite, Masha Slamovich.
Becca here.
This is not America's Sweetheart, Davian. And
It's Billy Starks. And
the super fly guy, Trayvon Jordan.
This is the fly side flyer, Jalen Brandon.
Hardcore Princess, Jules Malone.
Hi there, this is the Bubblegum Princess, Alexia Nicole.
This is the Brazilian Wonder Woman, Christy Jane.
This is the baddest black belt, Chennai Kai.
This is Kid Bandit.
The smash hit Joel Bateman.
This is Robin Renegade.
Cody Hawk.
Brutal Bob Evans. And you are listening to Wrestling with Entertainment, one of my favorite podcasts in the whole wide world.
This is the Plant Based Powahouse, the Meatless Martyr, and the Valiant Vegan, Sean Keegan. And you're listening to Wrestling with Entertainment.
Hello, and welcome to the show. It's Wrestling with Entertainment, the only audio experience on the web today. The trusted choice for interviewing all your favorite wrestlers every Tuesday and Wednesday on YouTube and Castbox, sponsored by Rogue Energy and Player One Coffee. I am, of course, your host, James J., and it is a great day for wrestling because we are wrestling with the Plant Based Powahouse, the Meatless Mojo, the Valiant Vegan, the Plant Based Prophet, Sean Vegan Keegan.
How we doing today?
We are good. How are you?
I'm quite well. I'm very, very busy as of late. Maybe not so much today, but a lot of big developments. Long story short, a lot of work to do. But I'm quite well. All good things.
All right. And where can we see the Plant-Based Powahouse next?
So, as of the time of recording, I will be at Chaotic Wrestling Owlmania at Night Shift Brewing in Everett, Mass. As of tomorrow night, July 20th. That's as of the time of recording. But long story short, and this is a big development I'm dropping here. Very soon, as of the time of recording, I will be there. But this upcoming Friday, I will be headed to the LA Dojo for New Japan Pro Wrestling in order to train for 12 weeks as part of an advanced camp. I am going with my very good friend, Jacques Saint-Jean, otherwise known as Sebastian Finn.
Oh, yeah.
That is going to be very exciting. Obviously, well in the area, we'll be looking for bookings out there. Just showing face, paying our dues, and trying to network. Although everything's kind of up in the air. Very, very, very much looking forward to the opportunities that may come out of, once again, that sort of training, but also the networking and just traveling to a whole different area than what I'm accustomed to. New England is my home. It has been my home in life. But it has been my home in professional wrestling. I've only ever really, so far, ventured as far as New York and New Jersey for wrestling purposes. And yeah, I've never even been to the West Coast before, to be honest with you. So to go train at the LA Dojo for New Japan Pro Wrestling, of all things, is kind of surreal. It still kind of hasn't sunk in yet. But long story short, the more I get out of the way and the more details we get ironed out, the less anxious I am about the process and the more excited and grateful I feel.
That's really awesome. And you're going to be under Tatsuri Sabata, correct?
So, for the purposes of the camp, we will be training under the likes of Kushida and Fred Rosser, actually.
Oh, okay.
However, there may be guest trainers as well. That was made clear to us, although that's not a guarantee.
All right. And where can we find Sean on all social media?
All social media. Let me think about that. I am on Instagram at Sean Vegan Keegan. I am on Twitter at Sean Vegan Keegan. I am on Facebook. I've been somewhat more active on Facebook since becoming a digital creator there. I am also Sean Veegan Keegan on Facebook. For whatever reason, it wouldn't let me use vegan with the single E, the proper spelling, back when I made that my Facebook name. So that's two E's. Sean V-E-Egan Keegan, basically. Kind of the same spelling as Keegan, but Sean Vegan Keegan on Facebook as well. Shouldn't be too hard to find.
And merchandise.
Merchandise, I am on prowrestlingtees.com/Sean Vegan Keegan. I have a few different designs out made by a few good friends of mine. More recently, specifically, there is some excitement surrounding a green variant of the Plant Based Powahouse design. It's kind of a Fallout parody, a Nuka-Cola parody, if you're familiar with that franchise. But basically,
Yes.
those were available in blue and red. I still only have the physical shirts in blue and red, but on Pro Wrestling Tees, there will be green variants of the plant-based power design made to order, because there has been demand for that. And I think of it like ask and you shall receive.
Absolutely. You got to give the people what they want.
Indeed. Unless it's animal products.
And we're giving the people what they want, and that is all the links to all your social media and merchandise in the description of the video below, both on YouTube and Castbox.
Well, I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Now let's get into it. You work for Chaotic Wrestling. Can you tell us about your relationship with the company?
I've worked for Chaotic Wrestling in some capacity since late 2018, since I started paying my dues there as a brand new student of professional wrestling. I started in October of 2018, more specifically October 2nd. I believe that was a Tuesday, very soon after I began attending Chaotic shows where I would help with ring crew, learn how everything worked. And I would watch some of the greatest to ever do it, in my opinion, like JT Dunn, who was obviously still a mainstay of professional wrestling. And I would watch my trainer, our current head trainer at New England Pro Wrestling Academy, Chase Del Monte, in action as well. So as I was honing my own skills at the school, slowly but surely I was watching some of the all-time greats, and I was paying my dues. And I have for a long time now, because when you think about it, October of 2018 is the better part of 5 years ago now.
Oh, yeah.
I've only really gotten on shows regularly with Chaotic Wrestling since last year. Even then, it wasn't necessarily quite so frequent. I did work a match, a six-man tag, actually, against the unit with the Brick City Boys in March. Had a dark match of sorts with Danny Miles in June. Ended up working a match in the New England title #1 contendership tournament with Mikey Webb in November. Rumble spots here and there. I was beginning to get a more regular spot as I began to get better and better reactions, and as I began to get better and better in the ring, of course, earlier this year. But I did come down with an injury in April when I was actually on a Chaotic show. So they, and we can get into that later if you want, but that has been my home. It's been the promotion that by far I've been the most emotionally invested in my career. All the ups and downs in the world in my career I've had have been in some capacity associated with Chaotic Wrestling. And frankly, there are fewer places I'm prouder to call home than Chaotic Wrestling, and subsequently the New England Pro Wrestling Academy as well.
I was going to say, the Chaotic family, the guys and girls from there, they do seem very close-knit from all of the people that I've been able to interview from the past from there.
Very much so. I would say we're a big, happy family. I'm still very close with a lot of the people I started around the same time as, like Armani Chaos and Paris Van Dale come to mind. They started training, in actuality, only a couple weeks before I started.
Oh, wow.
So we all came onto the scene, at least in training, around the same time. Those are just two examples, though. I've grown, as I developed admiration for these people, I've grown quite closer to the likes of TJ Crawford and Aaron Rourke and Davey N. They're people I've come to respect and I've come to know as friends, for sure. Those are just a few examples, though. Even just over the past couple of years, I've developed fierce friends and rivals in the likes of people I trained with and went on to travel with, in the likes of Sigma, El Espartano, the aforementioned Sebastian Seabass Finn. And like I say, those are just a few examples. Even the students who are not necessarily show ready, and we have a hand in showing the ropes, per se, ourselves. I've grown quite close with a lot of those people as well.
Definitely. I mean, its rivalry is like iron sharpens iron, so to speak. When you have great rivals like Seabass and El Espartano.
Big time. Big time. We bring out the best in each other in more ways than one. It is the simplest way I can put it.
Shout out to Armani Chaos and DVN, good friends of the show.
Oh yes. I even just had a very competitive match with Armani Chaos at a Limitless Dojo taping on Sunday. That was highly competitive, and you can keep an eye out for the Limitless Wrestling Mojo at the Dojo Season 5 on YouTube and IWTV. That was a very highly competitive match, and I'm sure if you're hearing this, you're looking forward to the outcome.
But that was not your first time at Mojo at the Dojo for Limitless. You was in Season 3, correct?
I was in Season 3 of Mojo at the Dojo. That's where I faced off against J-Heru as well as Dro Doobie.
Now, what did that kind of mean to you to get onto a Limitless show? Because obviously, when it comes to independent pro wrestling, there are a few bigger than Limitless at this point.
Oh, indeed. When it comes to, like you say, independent wrestling as a whole, but especially wrestling in Maine, you think of Limitless Wrestling. So getting into a Limitless ring and getting the opportunity to perform in the dojo setting in front of many well-respected peers of mine, that was very meaningful the first time, and especially the second time after making a comeback from injury. Getting one step closer, essentially, to being a part of these supercard events as well, hopefully down the line. That kind of means the world to me. It's very cool to once again work with people I've grown close with, grown respectful of, grown competitive with. Nothing better.
And having watched Mojo at the Dojo, it's very much like pandemic wrestling, so to speak, where it's not, an actual crowd, it's the other wrestlers around the ring making the noise and, being that crowd reaction. What was that experience like, obviously competing in front of other wrestlers in a pandemic style setting rather than, an actual crowd?
Well, to be honest, it didn't necessarily feel as jarring as one might expect, considering that what we do in training is essentially just that, where we work matches in front of people who are up and coming, people who are learning the ropes and the basics, but also people who are quite experienced, looking to give us feedback, looking to help us along our journey, but also see if there's anything special within us in their eyes, and also just kind of being along for the ride. That's pretty much what we do in training. It doesn't necessarily feel as jarring or as irregular, awkward as one might expect. That's something we do quite a lot. The main difference is the cameras are on now, and we're, being broadcast eventually to a worldwide audience.
Alright. Now, you mentioned very recently you had a knee injury. Can you give us what were the specifics of that injury? And, after getting an injury, after you were starting to build up, that you were starting to build some momentum up, and then just kind of stopping.
Sure, absolutely. This is very recent, so it's all still very fresh in my mind. In April, more specifically Saturday, April 8th, I worked a show called Over the Mountain in Goffstown, New Hampshire for Chaotic Wrestling. I was in a triple threat match with Trigger the OG and Jet Black, who made somewhat of a surprise appearance. He's out in Texas right now. All the love in the world for Jet Black. Long story short, I used my patented plant-based plunge, essentially a frog splash, to break up a cover that Trigger was making on Jet Black. Upon performing this maneuver, my left knee collided with the canvas at a very awkward angle, pretty much at exactly the right angle for the bursa sac in my knee to just airbag out and balloon up to the point where it was very, very restrictive. This is something they call prepatellar bursitis. Prepatellar bursitis is what the ortho called it. And that led to, even just over the next couple of days, bruising halfway up my thigh, remarkably restricted mobility in my left knee. Over the next couple of weeks, fluid just pooling down into my calf, ankle, and foot, resulting in, if you're familiar with edema, it basically just fluid pooling up in these surfaces and resulting in great sensitivity. It was quite painful. It was the type of thing where if I squeezed, let's say, my calf, wherever my finger or thumb would leave an indent for a good couple of seconds after. It was kind of gross, to be honest. A lot of discoloration, and I wasn't sure how to proceed. I wasn't in a rush to get back to wrestling on that leg.
Right.
But once I heard I was set to be out initially for 12 weeks, in other words, 3 months, I was quite wayward, to be honest. Wayward, depressed, however you want to put it. Because now, not only had I been gaining momentum that now came to somewhat of a screeching halt, I couldn't do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it anymore.
Right.
I could not express myself in the squared circle, whether it be in class or whether it be in a show setting, whether it be interacting with the Chaotic Wrestling faithful or attending a dojo taping or what have you. I was not a good time. Not an ideal time for sure. I was lucky enough at my everyday job, my day job, to get short-term disability and be able to stay home, elevate and ice my leg for hours and hours and hours on end while I was either watching TV or studying, because I was actually studying a couple other languages at the time. If you want to get into that later, we can. But I was trying to make the absolute best of my time, whether it was maintaining greater social media presence for the time being. That's what I was trying to do. But other days it was more just about self-care.
Right.
I was still also regularly attending the school whenever I could, especially now that I had all this free time. Icing and elevating all the while, I was watching class. I was keeping an eye out for developments students were making and giving my feedback wherever my knowledge or input was welcome. Not to mention learning things myself, not to mention doing little workouts that I could manage with light cable work for upper body purposes, my chest, delts, arms, etc., lats. Just doing what I could when I could to keep myself sharp, keep myself active, and get back as quickly as possible. And that's what I did, because at the end of the day, I ended up returning to training after only about a month and a half, just over a month, in May, when we actually had a seminar with Frankie Kazarian at the New England Pro Wrestling Academy. That's when I started dipping my toes back into the physical side of wrestling. I had already started trying to walk the ropes as opposed to run the ropes, tried seeing what kind of roles I could manage, because we often train roles, for instance, long story short, to get us out of situations where, if we fall on our head, at least we have the instinct to roll out of the way, roll out of harm's way, ideally not break our necks.
Right.
So I was trying walking the ropes, I was trying roles. But when this opportunity with Frankie Kazarian came up, just to kind of sit under the learning tree with him, I thought I would at least try to get physical again. And to my surprise and delight, I was able to manage a lot more than I thought I could. Whether that was because of the time I was able to get off, the extra supplements I was taking at the time for joint care, but also muscle recovery, taking extra aminos and more of certain vitamins here and there and what have you. Or some combination of those, some combination of that with staying active. I was able to come back in essentially half the time the ortho told me I originally might be. That was very, very reassuring, delightful for me, and I was very, very pleased to get back onto shows for the likes of Rad Pro Wrestling Islands of Illusion, where I worked as Leaf Montgomery in a match against Mortadella Matt the Meatmonger, otherwise known as Matty Meats. And I was able to return at number 12 in this year's Chaotic Countdown as well, the week following. So that was in late June, and I had only hurt myself in early April. I'm very, very, very grateful that my recovery went as quickly and about as well as I believe I could have asked for.
And I was going to say, maybe 3 months was for, your average everyday person and not a plant-based prophet.
Exactly. Not for a plant-based prophet, not for a plant-based powerhouse, not for someone who eats literally 200 grams of plant-based protein a day. And that's not a slogan, that's a shoot, my man.
Now, you had the honor of working with Tony Atlas. Can you tell us about that experience?
I sure can. Tony, I found to be, frankly, quite delightful to work with. He seemed very delighted with the work I'd done in a tag team match with him at the Farmington Fair in September of last year. I believe that was September 20th on a Tuesday night. In the main event of the evening, I tagged with Lee Miller, Lights Out Lee Miller, against Tony Atlas and Cousin Larry for North Atlantic Wrestling Association, for NAWA. that was very surreal. It was very surreal, frankly, to still see him working because I didn't realize this until after the match. He told me he was 78 years old.
Oh, wow.
More specifically, told me, "Yo, that was a nice bump you took. You got a good look. You're gonna do okay. Now you can say you wrestled a 78-year-old man." And I was taken aback. I did not realize he was 78 years old. I suppose it makes sense since he was on top with Rocky Johnson in the 80s. He was already a Hall of Famer, already semi-retired, but we managed to make something that really got a reaction out of the people that night, in a polling barn of all places in Farmington, Maine. That was very surreal and still kind of is.
I mean, it's incredible. Like you said, I didn't even know Tony still walked.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The closest I've seen him walk recently was that New Year's video he did where he got beat up.
Oh, the New Year's video. Yeah.
All right. So
And now they can say they beat up a 78-year-old man.
just like you.
Yeah. Pretty much. Even though I lost.
Well, I mean, you lost to the legend.
Yeah. No shame in that, right?
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, going from wrestling, an absolute legend in Tony Atlas. Can you tell us about that time you got beat up by children?
Oh my gosh. This is actually something I haven't been asked about for a bit, but it takes me back to when that clip of getting beat up by a bunch of children in Derby Line, Vermont went absolutely viral. Long story short, I was working a match with Bobby Orlando at ETWA Heatwave on August 13th of last year. This was my very first match with ETWA, very first show with them. They've held a kind of a special place in my heart ever since. It was a great pleasure to work with Bobby, of course. Bobby's the man.
Oh, yeah.
And he had the idea of holding my arms open on the outside, shouting, "Who wants to chop him?" And as opposed to, I might have been a bit more understanding had these children waited their turn. Had they chopped me one by one, maybe nicely, maybe gently.
A nicely formed line.
Oh, that's not what happened,
No.
of course.
Yeah.
These children mobbed me. Judging by the video, they must have ranged in age from about 5 to about 12. I don't know if that sounds right. I could be exaggerating with up to 12. But there were 8, 9, 10 of them, I want to say, just chopping the life out of me, smacking the life out of me. If you see towards the end of the clip itself, towards the end of this mugging, this beatdown in the middle of the match, that should have been a disqualification, by the way. There's no doubt in my mind that it should have been thrown out. They were not legal participants. One kid in blue just tries to get a good kick in on me. I'll never forget the kid in blue trying to put the boots to me in Derby Line, Vermont. First ever match for ETWA. But that certainly left an impression, perhaps more so than if we just had an ordinary match.
I was going to say, at the end it was starting to get ugly to the point where security had to come and take the children away from you.
Not that they were much help.
Yeah.
They pretty much only stopped at Bobby's behest. He had enough kindness to show me a bit of mercy.
Yeah, that's because Bobby Orlando is known for his mercy.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
But like you said, it should have been a disqualification.
Yeah. There's no doubt in my mind it should have been a disqualification. But it's in the past, I suppose.
I mean, you could always run it back with Bobby.
Exactly. No children allowed. All children banned from ringside.
There you go. That's a stipulation we never knew we needed.
Yeah, or at least bring in a guardrail.
That works too.
Yeah.
Right.
Good.
Can you tell us about Leaf Montgomery?
Leaf Montgomery is a wrestler, or perhaps I should say was a wrestler, in the year 1994, who is known for tagging with his friend Oak Blossom as the Plant Based Prophets. These two are in tune with what they call the mycelium. This is a mysterious entity believed to communicate with them through a network much like mushrooms may communicate with themselves through.
Okay.
Or communicate with each other, I should say. It's unclear, frankly, if these two just have an affinity for mushrooms. Maybe they are mushrooms, but they are here to spread the word about plant-based living, about compassionate, responsible living, kind of like I am, but with a very, very strange twist. They appear to worship and hold great veneration for the Mother Earth. Leaf Montgomery is known for saying things to his opponents like, "I'm sending you back to Mother in a compostable box."
Wow.
Return to the Mother. In particular with Mortadella Matt, for instance. He remarked that he reeked of decay, he reeked of indulgence and apathy, and he fully intended to destroy Mortadella Matt on behalf of the mycelium and send him back to Mother. He does what he does for the Mother Earth, and so does Oak Blossom, and so do the plant-based prophets as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, sending them back to Bobby Orlando.
Yeah, sending them back to our mom and everybody's mom.
Is Leaf Montgomery something that you knew about, or something that was brought to your attention? Trying to make this very kayfabe-esque.
Leaf Montgomery is somebody I came across along with Max Smashmaster,
Okay.
who does have, shall we say, stake in Rad Pro Wrestling. At least he did in 1994.
Right. It was a very long time ago.
And this was brought to my attention by Max Smashmaster being one of my trainers.
Yeah.
And the more I watch Leaf Montgomery grow and, shall we say, blossom, the greater respect and odd admiration I gain for him, even if he is quite out there. Him and Oak Blossom as well. Yeah, they're kind of, he was relayed to me in stories, but I began to identify with him the more I heard.
Okay. I think it's time for our next segment, and that is Sean Keegan's Bizarre Adventure. You're a pro wrestler that goes up and down the roads, and weird, crazy, and bizarre things are bound to happen. Can you tell us a road story that fits that description?
Weird, crazy things about to happen?
No, road stories. Weird, crazy road stories?
Weird, crazy road stories. Off the top of my head, I do remember on the way up to that show in Derby Line, Vermont, the same one where I got mopped by children at the behest of Bobby Orlando. Mom. I remember seeing a baby black bear running along the side of the road on the highway. That was the first time I'd seen a black bear in the wild. So I knew we weren't in Kansas anymore, shall we say. We were definitely going into at least uncharted territory for me, because that was my Vermont debut. And that was actually a rather fun trip we took up with, I say we, I mean myself, Ellis Spartano, and Seabass.
Okay.
That was all of our first ETWA show. And we went on to work many more throughout the year and earlier this year. I do remember making my way to a Create a Pro Wrestling taping last June in New York with Sigma. Myself and Sigma drove down, and we came across a man outside of a gas station somewhere in New York who, shall we say, had a little something in his system. And there was somebody inside very angry at this person for seemingly existing. The guy outside was a little weird and a little off-putting, but there was one customer inside who could not let his feelings be hidden. Made it clear that, he was displeased with the I'm going to use the word blockhead outside, shall we say. Off the top of my head, otherwise, I can't really think of anything particularly crazy or weird in terms of road stories. I do remember the first many times frequenting Vermont, I thought it was odd that they referred to a style of soft serve ice cream as what they call creamies. For instance, sorry?
I think I've heard that day before that. Day before as that.
Yes. In fact, the promoter of ETWA at the time, he was the booker of ETWA at the time, Adam Lash, who has gone on to work for Green Mountain Wrestling. He recommended that we all try a Vermontster, which is a maple creamy, I suppose, maple soft serve ice cream, perhaps a bit different. A maple creamy in between two apple cider donuts, which obviously I couldn't have.
Okay.
But we just thought it was the funniest thing. And obviously, if you have an immature enough sense of humor, you can get a lot of mileage out of calling anything a creamy, if you will.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, those were definitely interesting stories. I mean, especially seeing the black bear. I mean, like it was almost a sign of what was to come, no?
Yeah, you could say that.
Right. Now, during a match, somebody tried to shove sausage down your throat, no?
Yes. Matty Meats, in the midst of a battle royal, I believe to crown a number one contender for the Panoptic Championship at last year's December show for Chaotic. I believe it was called Dead End. Taking place on December 16th. In the midst of that battle royal, Matty Meats attempted to stick a sausage down my throat Now, I did not take kindly to this. Being a vegan of legitimately 11 and a half years and counting, this would have made me violently ill. In fact, just the apparatus alone being stuck in my mouth could have made me violently ill, especially, should have touched my uvula, God forbid. Upon being confronted with this, I decided to stop him in his tracks, grab Matty Meats by the wrists, take that greasy hand of his, turn it right back in his face, and stick it directly in his throat, backing him all the way up to the ropes, at which point I attempted to eliminate him. I failed at doing this, but I did manage to bruise his throat. I managed to legitimately bruise his throat. He probably should have relaxed it more, but here we are. And he never lets me forget it either.
I mean, Matty Meats, Sean Keegan, Veegan Keegan, match the perfect storm, no?
The perfect storm? Oh yeah. We were destined to do this forever, I think.
Now, hypothetically speaking, if there was a vegetarian wrestler, friend or enemy?
Friend. I would venture to say friend because a vegetarian thinks on a similar wavelength as a vegan, as far as I'm concerned, in that, well, it doesn't necessarily go as far as a vegan. I tend to think of them as an ally in that they don't want animals to die for their consumption. And at the very least, they are probably, in principle, against, at the very least, brutally killing animals for the purposes of factory farming. The main difference for me is vegans take it a step further, and they don't support factory farming at all by simply not purchasing animal products such as eggs, which are inevitably 8 times out of 10 produced by hens in battery cages. I won't get too into the graphic details, but stuff like that. Not supporting dairy and thusly the veal industry. Vegans take it a step further, but I would consider vegetarians an ally. Not to mention, since if I was only ever to be friends with people who hold the exact same ideals as me, being kind of a unique person in my ethics, shall we say, I would probably have little to no friends. And if I were to go about labeling everyone an enemy simply because they had a different perspective, within reason, I would not win many people over. By that same token, I would not be very convincing because a lot of people would be tempted to reject me outright from the off. Having labeled them an enemy without even getting to know them, I would immediately discredit myself because nobody cares if you're right if you're a jerk.
But I mean, it's a little different when somebody's trying to shove meat down your throat.
Oh yeah, no, Matty Meats, big enemy.
Yeah, and I mean, if, like you said, if you wasn't friends with people with different ideologies, you probably wouldn't be friends with El Espartano, considering how much that guy eats, especially before matches.
Oh my god, dude. Being on the road with him, I'm trying to remember how much he ate before what was it? I'm trying to remember how much he ate before the Sole Survivor match at last year's Squared Circle Seance for Fight Life Pro Wrestling. I believe he ate a bunch of seafood that day. I was wondering how he could even stomach it, let alone before a match of that caliber. That was pretty unreal.
Yeah. Now, when we say Sean, Veegan, Keegan, like you said, it's not a gimmick. you are legitimately a vegan.
11 and a half years and counting.
Can you tell us, because obviously 11 and a half years, it hasn't been your whole life. What brought it on to become a vegan and choose this life choice?
Yourself and probably many of you out there listening have likely seen videos on the internet such as From Farm to Fridge. I'm trying to think of some of the others. From Farm to Fridge comes to mind. But basically seeing exposés on factory farm settings where animals were kept in very confined conditions, artificially inseminated, made to grow to ridiculous proportions and weights for the sake of producing more product, but also, I suppose, making more, shall we say, tastier product by being pumped full of hormones and antibiotics, just being mistreated horrifically for the duration of their very short lifespans, which end up being inevitably short lifespans, since they are brutally killed. Like I say, I won't get into too much of the graphic details, too much of the,
Right.
Anyway, those convinced me on an ethical basis when I was about 15 years old. The more I learned about the health benefits as well, namely a plant-based diet, or even just mostly plant-based diets, being a much heart healthier option for many individuals, being easier on the digestive tract of many individuals, not to mention the environmental implications of hypothetically being able to produce a lot more grain or otherwise a lot more fruits and vegetables with the land that we tend to devote to animal agriculture, among other things like the amount of water consumed to, let's say, produce a pound of beef versus a pound of some other plant, maybe a pound of grain. There's an astronomical difference there, which can have environmental implications. Those are not necessarily the arguments you hear when in discourse with vegans. A lot of it, if you're in the heat of a conversation, if you're in the heat of the moment at the dinner table and challenging someone's beliefs, you may hear very emotionally charged responses.
Right.
Since, in part, this is where a lot of our conviction comes from anyway, but there is more to it than that. To the point where the more I learned, the more I thought to myself, why wouldn't I continue pursuing this? And that's how it's been ever since. Ever since literally December 7th, 2011. I've maintained a vegan diet and held strong in that.
That's impressive. And before
Thank you.
Before that, you were on, a normal diet with meat?
Yeah. I was an omnivore up until May of 2011, at which point I was vegetarian for about 6 months. At which point I learned more about the factory farming industry as a whole, dairy being very implicitly tied in with veal, eggs being, coming from the same hens they kept in battery cages and killed for chicken, eventually. Also, but those are just some examples, not to mention the health implications of cutting out eggs and cutting out dairy on top of various types of meat. There was a bit of cognitive dissonance there before I ever even seriously considered being vegan. I was vegetarian for about 6 months, and I was kind of weighing where I was at ethically, even though I was so young I didn't even necessarily know who I was yet.
Well, that does beg the question. do you consider McDonald's actual food? Because I don't even consider it meat at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on what you consider food. Would I eat there? No. Do I hold it against people? Not necessarily. I do, for all intents and purposes, McDonald's has shown to be a big proponent of factory farming, even if, perhaps they don't necessarily have a huge percentage of real meat.
Their chicken nuggets is the foam from the yoga mats, if I'm not mistaken.
What?
Yeah, you didn't hear that?
It's been so long since I've even considered eating McDonald's that I just don't hear about any of these things.
Google it, because that's a thing.
I'll Google it.
That's why I asked you, do you consider McDonald's actual food? But that's
Yeah. I mean, I guess with that considered, no. I did just purchase a new yoga mat, but maybe I could cut it up and make nuggets. Who knows?
Yeah, definitely you'll be in the market.
Yeah, that'd be another revenue stream for me.
That being said, could you tell us about the hashtag manflesh?
Hashtag manflesh. Now, hashtag manflesh, I should say, was an idea cooked up by myself and the perpetually hungry cosmic entity known as Sigma. We got to know each other mostly halfway through last year, spring, summer, fall of 2022. And upon seeing a video that spoofed and referenced a Lord of the Rings segment where a couple of orcs were in conversation and asked one another, "What is it? What do you smell?" "Man flesh." That was, at the very least, where I developed a liking for this. Sigma, I suppose, already had an affinity for Lord of the Rings. I always grew up on Harry Potter and preferred that, although in recent years I've developed a strong dislike for J.K. Rowling and supporting anything official Harry Potter, but that's a conversation for another day. Mm-hmm. We decided if we were going to form a tag team, we were going to form Team Manflesh. And that was going to be what you get when you add plant-based power, and whatnot, with staying hungry and the perpetual appetite for battle of Sigma. You get two insane, just absolutely bonkers, competitive individuals filled with a virtually unlimited amount of fighting spirit, just looking to expend their energy and consume. There are very few words I can use to describe it other than, once again, manflesh.
And I think that's all you need to describe. You need to describe it, honestly.
Yeah. What is Team Manflesh? It's Manflesh. And you should hear our entrance music too. People really got a kick out of it at Impulse Wrestling, Impulse Wrestling, run by Owen Brody, and NCW as well last year when we actually made our debut in August. We have teamed since then. but sometimes we don't find ourselves working for the same places a lot, sadly. We just have very different schedules, but whenever myself and Sigma find ourselves teaming up, we are team Manflesh.
Now, can you tell us about your love of Black Clover?
My love of Black Clover, that was an anime my roommate showed me in, I want to say, 2021, but it could have been 2022. The past couple years, in some capacities, can be quite a blur, where I mix up the timeline a bit when it has anything to do with stuff other than pro wrestling.
Gotcha.
But Black Clover is a fantasy anime depicting the lives of young people in a society where pretty much everyone has some... Well, I shouldn't say pretty much everyone. There are a great number of individuals born with magical abilities who, when they come of age, are... So they kind of earn grimoires, which are books containing ancient spells that almost choose them like the wand would choose the wizard, once again in that sort of wizarding world lore. There are wands and there are grimoires. Black Clover uses grimoires. And the protagonist in particular... Huh?
Noelle actually does use a wand, so it's not out of the way.
Right. She uses it to channel it. It's been a while since I've watched the show, to be honest.
Okay.
I have since developed a liking for anime such as Vinland Saga, not to mention more slice of life casual ones, even Netflix originals like Teasing Master Takagi-san, Kotaro Lives Alone. I really love Komi Can't Communicate. A lot of those are very cute and just kind of everyday life type stuff. But if you're listening and you're interested in Black Clover, in particular, that depicts a young man named Asta, who apparently has no magical ability, but manages to be a magic knight in spite of that.
Right.
His magic is never giving up, as they say. And I'll leave it at that for now. Once again, I'm a little rusty on it. Can't exactly remember where I left off, but, if I ever renew Hulu, we'll see if I catch back up on that.
I think it's on Netflix at this point.
What?
I mean, at least the movie was.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I'm just out of the loop.
The movie came out like a month or two ago. It was because they wrapped up the first, I don't want to say the first season, but they had to stop production at 175 because it caught up with the manga. So they took a break, so they made the movie.
Ah.
And if you're looking for, more slice of life, mellow animes, try Aria, the animation.
It's called Aria?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
It's,
I am looking for more to get into, for sure, because I am actually learning Japanese at the moment.
Yoroshiku onegaishimasu?
Yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
Oh, genki desu ka?
Yeah. Hi, genki desu. そして、お元気ですか?
Genki.
Nice. That's good to hear.
It's not everything I get to use, the little Japanese that I actually know.
Yeah, maybe we can practice sometime.
I think it's time for the colossal question. Let's say that they'll make a movie about big production. Every movie has a soundtrack. What would be the first 3 songs on the Veegan Keegan movie soundtrack?
The first song that comes to mind is the entrance music I use at the likes of Chaotic Wrestling and Fight Life Pro Wrestling. That's The Downfall of Us All by A Day to Remember. A Day to Remember is not only my favorite band of all time, that's one of my favorite songs of all time, off one of my favorite albums of all time. So that's a no-brainer right there. I think it's a song a lot of people have associated with me at this point anyway, so that's slam dunk number 1. And 2 others... I'm tempted to just pick more A Day to Remember songs, which would not be a bad thing.
I mean, you could copy and paste the album if you like.
Yeah. Part of me wants to select either, and even then when you get into albums, I'm like, well, do I want For Those Who Have Heart, or do I want Homesick, or do I want What Separates Me From You? And those are all just A Day to Remember albums.
So basically just the best of. One compilation.
Yeah. If I'm thinking of those off the top of my head, maybe The Danger in Starting a Fire, which is off of For Those Who Have Heart.
Okay.
As well as All Signs Point to Lauderdale, which is off of What Separates Me From You. So that's one from each right there.
Okay.
All 3 from different A Day to Remember albums. But each of which captures a different side of me as well, I think. And that just encapsulate different vibes, and can be good for cinematic purposes or just jamming while you're folding laundry or driving or doing whatever.
Yeah. Alright, now that we got the soundtrack down, everybody knows you get the soundtrack first, then you write the script, and then you cast. Who would play you, and you can't say yourself because you're obligated to make a Stan Lee-esque cameo?
Ideally, Keanu Reeves.
Oh yeah. That works.
Yeah, he's the very first person that comes to mind, and the more I really examine that question, I don't think I'd rather have anyone except Keanu Reeves.
And nor should you. I mean, once you get to Keanu Reeves, it's kind of like, is there anybody else? No, it's Keanu Reeves.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Part of me would have wanted to say, let's say Jake Gyllenhaal or Christian Bale, just so they could make another insane body transformation. But Keanu Reeves. It's Keanu Reeves.
Yeah. Now, every movie has a supporting cast. Who would be 3 people in your movie, and who would play them?
Ooh, that is a much harder question. I want to say, is this a movie about my wrestling career or about my life at large?
I mean, you're producing it, so it could be mainly about wrestling if you prefer. It could just be about your life and some wrestling on the side. However you want to do it.
Well, I suppose if that's the case, my best friend, who's a young woman named Jalea Pittman, she would be portrayed by Zendaya. I think that would be a good choice. That would be a good choice to portray her. And I just love Zendaya. I think she's incredible. My dad, my father, would definitely be portrayed by Robert De Niro, because if you look at pictures of them side by side, it's not uncanny, but it is kind of a running joke in our family and among people who know us that it's like, oh, he looks exactly like Robert De Niro, even though that's not exactly true, but he might as well be Robert De Niro. you could probably just see it in my nose alone. Who's one more person? That's two right there.
Yeah.
We mentioned myself as Jake. Well, Jake Gyllenhaal as myself. God, that was the hypothetical, right? Keanu Reeves as myself. Zendaya as my best friend Jalea. Robert De Niro as my father. And Sigma. I would love to see John Cena as Sigma. I just think that would be incredible. And seeing John Cena in the Sigma makeup, seeing John Cena make remarks about manflesh, and seeing John Cena talk about, hey, who's hungry? And he's hungry for battle. That would be just the highlight of my life, because he's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time anyway. That would be the icing on the cake. That's a good call right there. Sigma would have to be in my movie, so if I need to pick someone to play him, John Cena.
Awesome. I mean, this is sounding truly like a blockbuster.
I'm glad you asked now that you mention it, because I'll have to look into this if I ever find myself with the budget or the willingness to put a movie together.
Hey, well, you're definitely blowing the budget on casting, because I mean, you got Keanu Reeves and Zendaya, Robert De Niro, John Cena.
Yeah, I may never financially recover from this.
Well, you will make the money back when the movie comes out in theaters. That being said,
Undoubtedly.
You could pre-order the tickets now. Alright, on to a controversial subject. Pineapple on pizza. What's your stance?
Eat your pizza how you want to. That's the long and short of it. Do I frequently eat pineapple on pizza? I do not. I will say I don't. But I can see why it might be appealing. And I will say I very much like pineapple. As a matter of fact, it's my favorite fruit of all time. I like them separately. Pizza is probably my favorite food. Pineapple is my favorite fruit. I like them separate, but I do understand the appeal.
So there's no fusion technique between pineapple and pizza to keep them defused.
Yeah. I mean, if there's not that this would ever happen, but if there's vegan pizza laid out at a party, and it happens to have pineapple, maybe I'll eat it. But yeah, not that would ever happen. Vegan options on the road, vegan options at parties, still kind of not a thing in 2023.
Yeah.
Unless it's, specially made for a specific purpose.
What's your spirit Pokemon?
Ooh. I'm tempted to say, let's say if I was to pick my Gen 1 starter, I would pick Squirtle. In part because I actually had a turtle growing up, a red-eared slider who I named Squirtle because I got her when I was 8 years old.
That's awesome.
When I was really, really into Pokemon. A spirit Pokemon, though. Part of me wants to select a horse Pokemon, like, let's say, Ponyta or Rapidash, because I tend to think maybe if I was an animal, I would be a horse who is strong but gentle and, crucially, herbivorous. But at the same time, fighting types really resonate with me. Not just as a pro wrestler, but as someone who did martial arts growing up. I think I would really love to have a Machop as a friend and training partner. From the time I was young, maybe we grow together. He evolves into a Machoke, later a Machamp, and I evolve into a Plant Based Powahouse.
There you go. Alright. Now we love the late great Tracy Smothers on the show. Do you know the acronym for THUG? THG.
The acronym of THUG.
Yes.
I can't say I'm familiar with it.
T is for terrible, H is for hell, U is for ugly, and G is for jail, because a thug can't spell. Yes. We love the late great Tracy Smothers trying to keep the memory alive.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that'll keep the memory alive for sure. My goodness.
Now, the weirdest question you'll be asked on a wrestling interview, hopefully. Would you ever consider wrestling a rock? Not Dwayne Johnson, not the country, an actual physical rock.
I don't know. They could be a rock solid opponent. They also sound kind of stiff.
Undoubtedly.
If it's a rock that I can feasibly suplex, I'll take that challenge. But if there's a rock that it's the type of deal where there's not much I can do to it, don't really know if I want to run the risk.
Well, just for context, there's this wrestler named Psycho Mike that wrestled an actual rock for over 15 minutes in a Tungsten Man match. That's an Iron Man match that lasts for 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I suppose you've heard about the 1 year Iron Man match at Rad Pro Wrestling.
No, I have not heard of the 1 year Iron Man match.
So, word has it that they're beginning in August of 1994. There was actually a 1 year Iron Man match taking place at Rad Pro Wrestling between, and let me see if I got this right, Cro-Magna TA.
Okay.
And let me see here. That's Cro-Magna TA and Esteban Palomino. Rad Pro Wrestling's 1 year Iron Man match beginning at Birds of a Feather, August 12th, 1994.
And there was video proof of this match, correct?
There will be, starting beyond August 12th of this year, as it so happens.
Okay.
Sometime after August 12th of this year. It should be available on IWTV at some point.
Okay. mean, anybody could have a 1 year on man match with another human being.
Yeah, but perhaps not a rock. Yes.
On a more serious note, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I see myself, if not doing wrestling full time, taking on a lot more responsibilities in wrestling to the point where maybe I can afford to work part time as opposed to full time on the side.
Okay.
And where I'm just making a lot more notoriety for myself, holding championships ideally, but most importantly, resonating with people and making friends and fans all over the world, because that's what I want to do. If I'm even one person's favorite wrestler, I will have done my job, especially if I'm at least one person's favorite wrestler on any given show I'm on. If they want to come back to see me, I will have done my job. If I've made a bit of money, if everybody's safe and they had fun, I've done my job. But namely, and I may sound ambitious here, but it's a lot closer to reality now than it would have been otherwise, given my upcoming foray to the LA Dojo along with Seabass Finn. I aim to wrestle in Japan, of course. And I would love to have done so within 5 years of now.
Well, I mean, with that upcoming tryout, that might be sooner rather than later.
Yeah, with the advanced camp coming up, anything is possible. And that's how I'm trying to look at it, and I'm honestly so grateful.
And being somebody's favorite wrestler, I think you're already doing that with, all the awesome stuff you're doing in pro wrestling.
Yeah, I'm certainly my mom's favorite pro wrestler. One guy comes to mind who's a chaotic wrestling regular named Keith. Keith comes to mind. He actually has a podcast of his own called A La Carte with Keithy, or A La Carte with Keithy. He's a big friend of mine. He's just an excellent guy. Very friendly, very supportive. He is a part of what I call the Keegan section at Chaotic Wrestling.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm always delighted to see those guys. In fact, at Cold Fury this year, as you know, kind of Chaotic Wrestling's WrestleMania, working the semi-main in a triple threat with J-Heru Rivera and Club Cam. The Keegan section actually wielded vegetables like Rainbow Chard, not to mention signs with my name on them. That was pretty surreal to see. So I got to get a little posing with them before getting down to business and suplexing some fools like nobody's business.
And I will say that it is quite impressive that you are your mom's favorite wrestler, because usually Roman Reigns is up there with a lot of moms.
Yep. He's certainly the Mrs. Mom's favorite wrestler. Probably even more so now.
Oh, yeah. Alright. And what is a match people should go out of their way to see that best shows off what you are all about?
The end.
If you can get your hands on this match at the time you're listening out there, watch Mojo at the Dojo Season 5 and watch my match with Seabass Finn. That serves as a send-off for us from one dojo to another, as it were, where we just go for one another. From the first bell, we hold nothing back. That is one match I would seek out, perhaps above all. It's one of my favorite matches I've ever had, even still. Other than that, there is a triple threat match that I had with Sigma, as well as the Rabbit Honey Badger, Ryan Mooney, at Brawl in the Fall 2022. That was an ETWA show from last October. That is a match I'm actually very proud of, and I think showed a very competitive side of me. If you can, also watch the aforementioned triple threat from Cold Fury. I was very proud of that match too. I'm developing somewhat of a greater body of work, or at least a body of work I feel I can be more proud of, and I anticipate that the hits will just keep coming.
Now, the match with Seabass is not yet released as of this recording.
As of this recording, no. We actually just had the match on Sunday, kind of like the aforementioned match with Armani Chaos.
Okay.
That was part of the Season 5 taping.
Could the other two matches you mentioned, could we find them on YouTube?
I believe you can find the ETWA triple threats, the Cold Fury triple threats. I'm not too sure just yet. Let me take a look at this. I don't think so just yet.
Okay. So, the one match that is for sure on YouTube, I will put in the description of the video below, but on YouTube and Castbox. When the match with Seabass comes out, I know that comes on YouTube, Mojo at the Dojo, so I'll update the video when the match comes out. For anybody that hasn't seen it, wants to see it, wants to re-see it after this interview.
Oh, that sounds excellent, because I really suggest anybody listening go out of their way to see it.
Definitely. I will, hopefully it comes out soon. Maybe even before this interview drops. So,
Could be.
Alright, and since we are nearing the conclusion of this interview, we are wrestling with the 8 questions of...
Oh.
This is our speed round, our bonus round, the round where we see who you really are. Are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be. Allons-y.
Excluding yourself, greatest wrestler of all time.
Shawn Michaels.
Worst wrestler.
Luther Reigns.
You're main eventing WrestleMania for the World Championship. Who is your opponent?
Daniel Bryan.
If you could come out to anyone's entrance music, past or present, who would it be?
The Elite.
So, wait, which one? The Elite song or Wayward Son?
Wayward Son.
Okay, gotcha. Finish the sentence. Kayfabe is...
Ever-changing.
We would have also accepted tastes great on toast. Squash. Vegetable or fruit?
Fruit.
This is correct. Tomato magic.
Mm-hmm.
New Japan wrestler Tai Chi. His wrinkle gets smaller every year, revealing more of himself to the world. My question, what is the appropriate trunks to butt cheek ratio for ring gear?
Ooh. I guess it depends on your physique. I prefer a little less butt cheek in terms of the ratio for my gear. I do think some people can get away with a higher ratio of butt cheek to trunk. To each their own is kind of my perspective on that.
Okay. And
Not here to body shame, of course.
And the last question, the main event, the thing everybody wants to know. Have you ever had a conversation with a stranger in a supermarket about Darby Allin?
I can't say I have. No.
And that is the correct answer.
What do I win?
The prize of never having had a conversation about WI.
Fair enough.
That will conclude this interview. Thank you so much for coming on and doing this with me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor, a pleasure.
The pleasure and honor was all mine. And once again, where can we find all things Plant Based Powahouse on social media?
You can find all things Plant Based Powahouse on Instagram at Sean Vegan Keegan. You can find all things The One True Meatless Martyr on Twitter at Sean Vegan Keegan. You can find all things Valiant Vegan on Facebook. Following Sean Vegan Keegan. The vegan has 2 E's for some reason. And you can find all merchandise pertaining to the Vegan Suplex Machine, the Man of 1,004 Vegetables, Broccoli Lesnar. I made a few of those up at prowrestlingtees.com/Sean Vegan Keegan.
You're getting those nicknames longer and longer as you go.
Oh yeah.
And you don't have to type it into your Google machine. All the links to all his social media will be in the description of the video below, but on YouTube and Castbox, simply click the link. A new tab will appear on whatever device you are on. You have no excuse. Buy a damn shirt.
Yeah, you won't regret it. It'll look good. It's organic cotton.
Definitely. Of course, thank you for listening. If you like what we're doing, please like, subscribe, comment, but on YouTube and Castbox. This was sponsored by Rogue Energy and Player One Coffee. Join us next Tuesday and Wednesday for new incredible interviews. Follow the show at WRESTLINGWITHE, both on Twitter, Instagram, and Thread. You can follow me at JamesJ993. Alright, Sean, when I say wrestling wit, you say entertainment, okay?
Will do. Sounds good.
For our special guest, Sean Vegan Keegan, Kaliko Yacht, Scooter Dust, I'm James J, and this has been Wrestling with
Entertainment. Yeah.
Man Meat.
Man flesh.
Hey folks, this is the Colossal Mike Law, and you are listening to Wrestling with Entertainment. Enjoy the show, support these guys. We appreciate it very much. We'll see you at ringside.